In the beginning, God created beast and man so that both might live in friendship. Evil men betrayed God's trust and waged bloody wars, not only against their own kind, but against the apes. Our Savior led a remnant of those who survived in search of greener pastures, where ape and human might forever live in friendship.
Welcome to Lawgiver, a Planet of the Apes podcast. My name's Tom Elliot, and if we were to carve a Mount Rushmore for the Planet of the Apes franchise, the debate over who gets those 4 spots would certainly be a fierce one. But there is one name that is absolutely indisputable. One actor who would earn his place in The Rock before anyone else. And that actor is Roddy McDowall. He is essentially the DNA of the original saga, carrying it across multiple generations, timelines, and formats. Out of the 5 original feature films, he starred in 4, and when the franchise migrated to television, he was there to lead the way, ultimately portraying 3 completely distinct chimpanzee characters and showing everyone else how it was done. Now, most fans know him first as the gentle intellectual archaeologist Dr. Cornelius in the 1968 original and Escape from Planet of the Apes. But then he seamlessly shifted to play Cornelius' own son, the revolutionary leader Caesar, in Conquest and Battle. And then he returned to Planet of the Apes on the small screen as Galen, the fugitive chimpanzee outcast of the 1974 live-action television series, even donning the makeup years later again to play an older Galen for new introductions to those episodes. But who was the man behind the makeup? Tonight we're diving deep into the life, career and legacy of this franchise legend when I present to you an interview that I did with the author of a new biography which is out now called Roddy McDowall, An Actor's Life, written by Samuel Garza Bernstein. Samuel, welcome to the show. It's so good to talk to you. Thank you for coming on.
Thank you so much for having me.
Could you maybe introduce yourself to the audience? Tell us about some of the projects that you've worked on.
You know, I'm living in Portugal now, so I can say, chamo-me Samuel Garza Bernstein. Sou escritor, os livros, uma televisão, cinema e teatro. I don't know what possessed me to just say that. Anyway, I'm a writer I write books. I write for television and film and theater. I have had a very long career. I have worked in television for 20 years. So my book, Roddy McDowall, An Actor's Life, is coming out at the end of May. And I'm writing the 4th series of a show called After Forever that's on Amazon.
Oh, cool. Okay. All right. So, I mean, I've been looking down some of your books. Cesar Romero, that's definitely one that I'm going to get to. Big Batman fan, so I will go back and check that out. Yeah. But what inspired you to choose Roddy as the next focus for a biography?
You know, with any job that you do, there's a certain amount of, this person suggested, this person said they might be interested in buying, there's a real world aspect to it. So I was talking with my agent, Lee Sobel, and he mentioned to me that no one had ever done a bio of Roddy McDowall. And someone, there's always been these things floating around that his archives were closed for 100 years until after his death. And I had sort of vaguely heard that, and I thought, well, is that true. So I
Hmm.
called up Boston University and I went, hey, can I see these archives? And they're like, sure, come on. And so knowing that I had access to that,
Hmm.
we pitched the idea to Kensington, and lo and behold, they said yes, and I started work.
So maybe that rumor worked in your favor because no one else did it in the meantime.
Well, I think that did work in my favor, but I also think, you know, everyone has always approached this idea of Roddy McDowall as the keeper of everyone's secrets,
Hmm.
everyone's best friend, and all of this stuff. I I mean, I fell in love with Roddy McDowall when I was like a little kid.
Yeah.
And I mean, I sort of wanted to grow up and be Roddy McDowall, like, seeing him on television. And I'm never that interested in the scandal, quote
Right.
unquote, part of it, because to me, it's sort of like, well, what are we going to reveal? That Elizabeth Taylor liked sex?
Hmm.
Ooh, newsflash. There's not a scandal kind of aspect to this that resonates with me.
Yeah.
Whereas really giving the respect to somebody who did nothing but work hard his entire life and
Yeah.
is deserving of our respect and our attention. That made me feel very satisfied to be able to do that.
I think in a similar sense, for me, Roddy McDowall was just one of those people who, if you turned on the TV and he was on, whatever it was, you would just immediately warm to him.
Yeah,
Now, I knew nothing about his private life or anything like that because, firstly, I was just a kid. You're just
yeah,
watching TV.
yeah.
But I understand from, the notes that you supplied that in his private life, people did value his friendship a great deal. So
Oh,
what was it about him that made him such a presence in people's lives on and off screen, do you think?
I think that he was genuinely interested in other people.
Hmm.
And especially for an actor, that's not always the case.
Definitely.
The old joke about, but enough about me. What do you think of me? He was not like that. He was very curious about the world. He was very curious about others.
Hmm.
And he took his friendships and his relationships very, very seriously. Um, it wasn't that he kept your secret because he knew it was scandalous and could get somebody in trouble.
Hmm.
He kept your secret because he loved you and
Right.
you trusted him and he trusted you. And I also think that he was a child star who had quite the weight of the world sort of
Hmm.
on his shoulders from an early age. And I think in that sense of being very reactive to what's going on around him, I think he really felt like he could see what was going on with people and he could see what made things better and
Yeah.
what made things worse.
Hmm.
And he decided, I'm going to make things better. So every situation he was in, whether it was meeting a new person and having lunch, whether it was starting a new job, whether it was whatever, he looked for how can I come in here and make this situation a little bit better.
Right. Right.
And that's just a really wonderful way, I think, to be in the world.
So when you're getting to know Roddy, obviously you spoke about the archives. Now, I love stories about authors going to these archives because the paper trail, I'm not sure it exists in the same way anymore, but it's
Yeah.
all there. Could you tell us what's there? What particularly got you excited?
Well, every piece of paper that Roddy McDowall ever touched in his entire life. Uh, I mean, his driver's licenses, his acting, SAG cards,
Hmm.
just everything's there. All the scripts, all the photographs, all the correspondence. And it's true, before the advent of inexpensive long distance,
Hmm.
everything was on paper.
Yeah.
So there are just hundreds and hundreds of letters between him and people, people like Noel Coward and just
Wow.
the person after person after person, of course, Elizabeth Taylor and Richard Burton, and but also friends that were not so well known.
Hmm.
And you really get a sense of how important he took those friendships.
Yeah.
He asked questions that were that were real, that were meaningful, and he never. There's a wonderful correspondence that goes on between him and the English actor Dirk Bogarde and a friend of theirs named Bodie Boatwright,
Wow.
she was a film executive and agent.
Hmm.
And it's wonderful to me that both Dirk Bogarde and Bodie Boatwright are constantly saying funny things about the other one. And Roddy never, because there were copies of Roddy's letters to them also. He would
Okay.
make copies of his own letters before sending them. So, and you can see he doesn't divulge to either one of them what the other one is saying about, what they're saying about each other.
Hmm.
And it's nothing, it's nothing terrible, but it's just sort of the funny kind of catty things that we all
Yeah.
would say to each other. And the other part about a lot of that correspondence is that it was really a lot of it was like being on Facebook. Um, it was very much about, well, I'm going to be here. I'm going to be at the Excelsior. And if you're there, and then, oh, I think that George is going to be there, but then Martha's coming, and maybe we can pick,
Yeah. Yeah.
and what they're eating, what they're like. I mean, really, he would have loved Facebook.
Wild. That's brilliant. So I'm going to test your memory a little here, Samuel.
Oh God.
But but I have to ask the question because
Okay.
Roddy is in the holy trinity of rod sailing projects. He's in the Twilight Zone. He's in the Night Gallery. He's in Planet of the Apes. Is there anything in the archives or elsewhere that you can specifically relate to rod sailing or the Twilight Zone?
Well, one of the first thing that comes to mind for Planet of the Apes is, you know, the detail of Roddy's script notes.
Mm,
I could have 20th Century Fox wouldn't let me. I was going to print in the biography just a copy of his notes on one page. I
hmm.
mean, I wasn't like, going to print the whole script or anything. And they get very funny about that stuff. But it he approached every moment of that performance. This is from the original
Yeah, yeah.
script, the original movie. It's no different than doing Shakespeare for him.
Hmm.
He took it so very seriously. And the care with which he approached building a character that anybody else might have looked at as like, well, I'm playing an ape.
Yeah.
I'm not even really an ape. I'm a chimpanzee, but
Yeah, yeah.
Planet of the Apes, so I'm an ape. And but he didn't look at it that way. One funny thing about the Night Gallery episode is that the butler, Ossie Davis plays the butler in the episode that he's in the cemetery.
Yeah.
And I think the butler's name is
Portafoy, yeah. Portafoy,
Portafoy.
yeah.
And so William Ragsdale, who did Fright Night with Roddy, I interviewed him, and one of the things he talked about was that that was maybe the first time he remembered as a kid
Hmm.
seeing Roddy. And he was just the way that Roddy kept calling out to Ossie Davis, going, Portafoy, Portafoy. So William Ragsdale would follow Roddy around the set, calling out to him about that. And to Roddy's credit, he always took it with a good deal of grace and laughed about it instead of swatting the kid away and saying, "Stop that already."
Brilliant. I'm particularly fascinated then about what you've just said about his notes about Planet of the Apes. And unfortunately, I haven't been able to reprint them, but have you been able to kind of give us a flavor of them in the book? You know, what kind of things he's saying?
Yeah, I mean, he's really looking at, well, the thing is with Planet of the Apes, he kind of invented and was teaching other people how to act
Hmm.
with all this stuff all over you. Like, how to, and so some of it is very technical about, surprised look and how to like do that to, in response
Wow.
to this or into
Yeah.
that, because it got very, very technical because you couldn't just respond like a person
Hmm.
because with all the prosthetics and stuff, it didn't necessarily register.
Yeah.
So he actually on set was having these kind of like little informal acting classes, going, well, if you go like this, if
Hmm.
you go like this, and you're kind of like with your teeth like this, it makes it look like you're, doing fear or you're doing this
Yeah.
it was almost kind of like back in the silent movie days, they used to publish the very funny instructions on how to act and how to make faces, and they would show like
Uh-huh.
joy, terror, and
Yeah.
so it was a little like that because it was very rudimentary,
Mm.
but kind of needs must, and
Yeah.
he was very, very I think very generous in terms of going, you know, this helps everyone.
Yeah.
You know, this isn't about me protecting my performance. This is about making this a better experience for everyone. And people were a little wigged out in the, well, literally and figuratively in that shoot. And I mean, Kim Hunter really struggled with being in the thing. Sal Mineo in the later one in what's that one? Escape.
Hmm.
Sal Mineo was just like they had to cut his part short because he couldn't, like, he just
Mm.
freaked out.
Hmm.
The makeup was so confining, and he just couldn't do it for as
Yeah.
long as he was supposed to.
That's fascinating because, these days Andy Serkis gets quite rightly praised as a pioneer for his work in
Yeah.
things like Plans of the Apes, but Roddy as this kind of figure helping everyone out, saying, "Okay, this is what you do. This is how you look like this." That's such a lovely story. I'm glad to have heard that from you. Thank you.
It's part of how I really grew to love this man
Mm.
because there are just these instances over and over throughout his career where he he showed how much he cared about the work as a whole,
Yeah.
the people involved in the work. And
Hmm.
if I mean, the one thing that would make him really respond negatively to someone is if he felt they had been unkind or rude or
Yeah.
obnoxious to someone, especially to somebody who couldn't fight back.
Hmm.
I mean, he was world famous at the age of 12.
Yeah.
As much as his career took a lot of ups and downs subsequently, he always knew that he was, in our parlance, that he was privileged.
Yeah. Yeah.
And he was especially concerned that those who are not privileged not be taken advantage of. And he was really that way in
Hmm.
really all aspects of his life.
Again, with that level of preparation, you talk about, Fright Night, that 6-page biography of the character that he
Yeah,
does prior to doing it. And I
yeah.
and I looked down his resume, and I didn't realize how prolific he actually was. Even in his later years, there's just like bang, 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 credit after credit. I mean, did he always give that level of preparation to things?
I think he did. Now, when he was a little kid, um, he was curious about everything, but he
Hmm.
didn't really have technique. He was just a kid.
Yeah.
And the way that I would describe it is to say, you know, generally speaking, this is very much an overgeneralization,
Hmm.
but generally speaking, a child is playing in the moment and playing the text. They're not
Yeah.
playing a lot of subtext usually. It's very much like, okay, we're doing this, and if you can keep them kind of mindful and in the moment,
Hmm.
you can get that performance out of them. And he talks about the way that John Ford worked with him on How Green Was My Valley, and it was like, he referred to it as John Ford playing him like an instrument, that he
Hmm.
just, I mean, it was all about sort of responding and reacting in the moment. And, when he had those giant eyes, so you just
Yeah.
go in for close up, you look at his eyes and you're like, boom, it hits you between the eyes emotionally.
Yeah.
You look at him in Lassie Come Home. You look at the dog, you look at him, you start crying, it's over. There's not a lot of technique that's required in
Yeah.
those kinds of jobs.
Yeah.
Now, as he became an adult, he realized, okay, now I have no idea what I'm doing.
Hmm.
Like I have a certain presence that I understand how to kind of, work
Hmm.
and how to use on a set, but I don't really know what I'm doing. And he had to learn how to approach a character really from the bottom up.
Yeah.
And he studied with Montgomery Clift's acting coach and with some other acting coaches, and he built a process that made sense to him.
Okay.
And I mean, it's a little bit methody in places, but not really. And it's a
Hmm.
little bit of this and it's a little bit of that. But what he would do is he would map out everything that he thought the character might be feeling and thinking in response to everyone else. And that would all be mapped out. And then he would forget it. Like it was like he would do that work and then be completely open to it being something completely different if that's what happens.
Okay.
But in grounding himself with all that work,
Yeah.
then he felt, I think, free to kind of respond very in the moment,
Mm.
very organically.
Hmm.
And so it was a kind of a way of preparing it all very much outside in,
Yeah.
and then allowing the inside to inhabit the way that it wanted to.
Fascinating, because he just makes it look so effortless, but there's all that work that's gone into it. Wonderful.
Isn't there usually for everybody? Like it's the more effortless it is,
Yeah.
the more hard work went into it, I think, for most things.
Hmm. Hmm. You talk about how Roddy found himself at the heart of some really big, pivotal Hollywood events. Cleopatra, the passing of Rock Hudson, Elizabeth Taylor's relationship with Sybil, Bert, and Christopher. So what was it about Roddy that made him kind of be at the center of all this?
Well, I think I never underestimate the power of curiosity.
Hmm.
I think most of us, and I don't, like I'm not pointing the finger at other people. I'll point the finger at myself. I think most of us we're curious about ourselves.
Yeah.
Like we want to talk about our own stuff, and it's rare, I think, when somebody is smart and funny and curious
Hmm.
about, well, what do you really think? Not what do I think you think, so
Yeah.
that I
Yeah.
can then come up with my smart, funny response.
Hmm.
And I mean, I think a lot of conversations certainly, I mean, I've been in the entertainment business my whole life since I was a little kid.
Yeah,
And, you know, most conversations are, one person is nodding their head, thinking up the next clever thing that they're going to say when the other person takes a
sure.
breath.
Yeah, yeah.
And, it's, he just didn't want to live that way.
Mm-hmm.
And he was a great storyteller. Like he remembered everything,
Mm-hmm.
and he remembered everything about Hollywood and about the careers of people that he admired.
Yeah.
And so, he could meet you and tell you things about your own work that you'd forgotten,
Yeah.
or had been too drunk to remember. I mean, don't forget, he was hanging around with people like Richard Burton and Rex Harrison. There was a lot of drinking going on. So, he could remind Richard Burton how funny he had been that night when he
Yeah.
said, this or that or whatever. And I think he liked making people feel seen.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's how we put it now. I think in his day, you didn't talk about, I want to feel seen or I want
Yeah.
to feel like, but I think that was really one of his special gifts.
Mm-hmm.
I talked to Ileana Douglas, and she was very close with Roddy, and he gave her away at her wedding to Jonathan Axelrod in the 90s. And she was like, he just got me.
Mm-hmm.
Like we met and he looked at me and I felt like he saw everything that I was and everything that I hoped to become.
Yeah.
And, and he wasn't interested in, telling you that you couldn't be what you wanted to be.
Mm-hmm.
He wanted to find a way to help you become whatever it is
Yeah. Yeah.
that you thought you could become. And it's really, I interviewed a lot of people because unlike some of the other people that I've written about, Roddy was sort of multi-generational.
Sure.
So in his older years, he was still making friends and putting, bridges out to
Mm-hmm.
younger generations. Where like, Caesar wasn't doing that. I've written about Joan Crawford. She really wasn't doing that. Like they were not interested in doing that. So when it came time to write those books, there weren't a lot of people left,
Mm-hmm.
that really remembered them. Roddy, tons of people are around. And I mean, I spoke with Chris Sarandon and William Ragsdale and Joanna Gleason and, all of these people. And everyone, I think I I don't know if it's everyone, but but in my mind, I think it's actually everyone that I spoke with
Mm-hmm.
started crying when they talked about Roddy, but
Oh.
tears of joy, not like they weren't like sad. They were
Mm-hmm.
just like it made them feel so much to remember how special they felt
Yeah. Yeah.
in his presence. And I think that is an enormous gift. You know, right now, a number of people that were not necessarily willing to talk to me when I was writing
Mm-hmm.
are now coming forward because they can read the book and see that it's not
Yeah.
doing
Yeah.
anything, I'm not, trying to make a big scandal out of something. And people like Carol Burnett and Julie Andrews, and they're really, I am told, so I don't know this for a fact yet, but I am told that, that they're sort of loving the book and
Oh,
ready
good.
to talk about it themselves, because he was so special to them.
Yeah.
Not, and it really is like that human. Sure, they respect his achievements and they want to see him known for those achievements,
Mm-hmm.
but they loved him. I mean, Melissa Rivers, uh, uh, Joan Rivers and Roddy were close, and Melissa read the book, and she was just like, I loved him and he was my godfather and I didn't know half this stuff. And it just makes me love him even more to to be able to know these because he was somebody who lived very much in the present. So he wasn't going on about, this thing happened to me in 1946, with little Melissa Rivers when she's 10, and it's kind of a way that they're discovering bits about his past that brings them close to him as well.
So I wasn't aware until I actually read the material about your book that Roddy was actually a gay man.
Hmm.
For some people, especially during his, most famous years, I suppose, that could be, a career-ending thing. People navigated that in various ways. How did Roddy navigate it?
Well, I think it was lucky for him to a degree that he wasn't a leading man as
Hmm.
an adult. I mean, he had some leading man characters. I don't mean he wasn't the lead in anything, but he wasn't in the 60s, like he wasn't George Papard
Right,
or
right.
Robert Redford or somebody. He wasn't primarily a romantic lead.
Hmm.
So I don't think people were as interested in his personal life.
Yeah.
So he didn't really have to manufacture one. He one of the happiest discoveries that I made in the archives was that throughout all of the correspondence with his friends, with his family, not with his mother, but with everybody else in his family, and with agents and studio execs and directors and other actors. Um, his relationships were completely normalized.
Hmm.
So, when he had a long-term relationship with a man named John Valva, I'm sorry,
Hmm.
in the 60s. And every letter from the agent or from 20th Century Fox, every letter was like, give my love to John.
Hmm.
John sent me the funniest card the other day. Tell him it made me laugh. Just this, all the regular day-to-day
Yeah, yeah.
normal things that I think those are among the most important things in terms of normalizing one's relationships.
Hmm.
That, I don't think it's so important that everyone can talk about their sex life, but I think it's very important that they can talk about their home life,
Yeah.
with their partnerships, those kinds of things. And so, of the three relationships that I was able to, kind of piece together through correspondence and stuff, all three of those relationships were long term, were accepted by everyone in his life,
Hmm.
and there was no scandal.
Yeah. Just wasn't a big deal.
No, and I'm very adamant that I don't feel like I'm outing Roddy McDowall. Like
Yeah.
first of all, he left his archives knowing someone would read them.
Sure.
So if he didn't want any of that information out there, at any moment he could have destroyed any of it. So I feel like there's a tacit approval of anything that is written about from his own archives because he saved them, and
Hmm.
he saved them so that someone could research them.
Sure.
They're not in an archive just to look pretty and be there. But it it just made me very happy because you hate the idea of imagining that someone was sort of tormented
Yeah,
or
yeah.
felt badly about things or something, and it doesn't seem that he did. And there's a very weird sort of subplot that goes on in the 50s, though. His therapist at one point was the same therapist who ended up writing about Sybil.
Okay.
The split personality, Sally
Yeah,
Field,
yeah.
all of that.
Hmm.
Well, Dr. Wilbur wrote a not very particularly disguised version of Roddy's case file that was printed in a national magazine.
Oh, wow.
And at the time, it was not necessarily, I haven't been able to discover anybody putting those pieces together at the time,
Hmm.
like publicly, at
Yeah.
any rate. Now, Roddy knew about it, and he did not write about it in his archives, but I can only imagine that he would have felt completely betrayed.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And Dr. Wilbur was kind of part of a kind of conversion therapy kind of
Okay.
idea that in the 50s, to be fair to her, would not have seemed a bad idea to
Hmm.
most people. Like most people would have thought, well, that's yeah, you want to make people, normal. Um, so I don't want to vilify her for that being something that was on her sort of agenda,
Hmm.
but I will vilify her for betraying his trust that way, and it left him, I think, maybe in some ways feeling very vulnerable, and he certainly couldn't sue her because to sue her would be to drag out in public that yes, this is me.
Yeah. Yeah.
But maybe once that moment had passed, and that would have been, I think, around 58, maybe.
Hmm.
Um, uh, maybe with that moment passed, I think maybe it gave him a little bit even more sense of like fearlessness.
Sure.
Like, well, if you can get through that, then I guess nothing terrible is going to happen. I mean, he's in a a truly terrible movie called Angel, Angel, Down We Go in the
Okay.
late 60s with Jordan Christopher, Sybil Burton Christopher's husband, who was kind of a nominal rock star and actor of the era. So he's playing this sort of rock star, and Roddy's playing this pansexual kind of hanger on who has a whole monologue about how he doesn't care, and he's half naked most of the time, and he does this whole monologue about how he'll sleep with anybody that appeals to him, and he doesn't care what their gender is. And I'm
Right.
like, this, wow, like, I mean, I wish it were a better movie because it's kind of crazy. It's a crazily bad movie. It's Jennifer Jones, I think, was the last movie, and the lesbian folk singer Holly Near is in it. It's one of those weird show business mashups where you just kind of go, I don't know what anyone was thinking when they thought this was a good idea, but it certainly didn't work.
So Roddy died in 1998, I believe, and I'm gonna I'm gonna tell you about my interaction with him. You can use this in your next book if you want.
Okay.
No, such as it is, I don't think anyone's going to write about this one. But in 1996, I was working in New York, and I believe that Roddy was living in Sag Harbor at that time on Long Island, and I was working in a restaurant in Sag Harbor. And I'm not sure what it was, but for some reason, I ran out of that restaurant. The reason why I ran out, I cannot remember. But when I came back, one of the chefs said to me, "Do you realize who you just nearly knocked over running out of this place?" And I'm like, "No." And it's like, "You nearly just knocked over Roddy McDowall." And first of all, I was devastated that I nearly knocked him over. We never collided or anything like that. I must have just ran past him really fast. And secondly, I was devastated that I missed my chance to meet Roddy
Oh.
McDowall. But, at least I was within a couple of feet of him. So that's my Roddy McDowall story.
Well, he was there. Actually, I can't remember the name of the theater. I think it's the Bay Street Theater.
Yeah, yeah.
He was very involved with that theater. So he
Hmm.
didn't live there, but he
Okay.
sometimes spent quite a lot of time there.
Got you.
And he did do things at the theater.
Hmm.
And so you could find him there in the summers.
Obviously, very sadly, he passed away from cancer. And I understand this is something that he kept to himself. I mean, what's the story there?
It really, it was fast. I mean,
Right.
even though, I mean, it's not, he did keep it to himself, but it was a fast thing. He was doing 6 shows a week, 7 shows a week at Madison Square Garden in front of
Hmm.
6,000 people, doing a Christmas Carol.
Yeah.
And he was alternating with, oh my gosh, it slipped my mind. Hal Linden. They were alternating the role of Scrooge,
Hmm.
and he he struggled lifting Tiny Tim,
Okay.
and he wrenched something in his back, and he thought, oh, like I'm gonna have to get that looked at, and so that was, they closed the run, I guess January 1st, and he went back to California, went to his chiropractor, it didn't help. He went to, his massage therapist, really didn't help. And he had late stage lung cancer.
Hmm.
And, he, it was diagnosed, I think, in February. And he kept it to himself until about, I think it started getting out in about September.
Right.
And so he did keep it to himself for about 6 months. And, it was he worked constantly,
Mm.
I mean, constantly. He was traveling. There was I don't remember which anniversary edition. I guess it would have been the 30th anniversary of Planet of the Apes was coming
Hmm.
around. And he was doing events in different cities for that, and he was recording all of the animated shows that he did voices for.
Hmm.
He just, and he did, like 700 interviews for A&E's biography. Like
Wow.
he shows up for every single, Shirley Temple, this one, it's like he knew them all.
Hmm.
And so he was doing a lot of those. And it became clear relatively early on that it was not, that it was not going to get better.
Yeah.
And one of the only people that he let in on it was actually the actress Doris Roberts.
Hmm.
They were close, and he knew that Doris could keep it to herself and not turn it into him taking care of her.
Right.
I think what he knew would happen, and I think he was right, is that because of the relationship that he had with so many people, and because he was such a person that people looked to for advice, for love, for kindness,
Hmm.
he was, I think he understood that he would not be able to do all the things that he wanted to do before he died, getting
Right.
things ready, getting all of his estate stuff ready, if he had to take care of all of his friends and
Sure.
loved ones who were going to be in, a very difficult
Yeah.
place emotionally. And it tortured Doris Roberts that because she was just like, well, what about Elizabeth? What about Sybil? You have to tell these people.
Hmm.
And I mean, and it's kind of extraordinary that really his two best friends were these two women who were, I mean, they weren't mortal enemies or anything, but they were certainly not friends.
Hmm.
Sybil had been married to Richard Burton when he started his affair with Elizabeth Taylor during Cleopatra.
Yeah.
They were all, I mean, these villas, this was a hotbed of activity. And reportedly, so Roddy and John Valva were staying in the same villa with Richard and Sybil Burton and their kids.
Uh-huh.
And then Elizabeth Taylor was with Eddie Fisher, like right next door in their villa,
Hmm.
and everyone was sleeping with everybody. And apparently John Valva started an affair with Sybil Burton while during that time. So, he was cheating on Roddy with Sybil. This did not affect Roddy's love for Sybil in any way, I guess.
Hmm.
And all those years later, at his deathbed, one of the last two people at his side were Sybil and Elizabeth Taylor together.
Right.
And he told them that he wanted them to do this thing for him. He was a longtime supporter of the motion picture, television, and film and television fund, where the country home that's in Woodland Hills where
Hmm.
retired actors live. and he wanted them to create a rose garden
Hmm.
in his memory, and it's got the statue of him as Caesar from the last
No
two
way.
Planet of the Apes movies, and an artist who was a friend of theirs named Adam Kurtzman did a sculpture of Roddy that's at
Hmm.
this pond where, with this whole rose garden. And he told Sybil and Elizabeth Taylor that they were going to raise this money and they were going to have this built together. And if they didn't do it together and if they didn't get along, he would haunt them. And he meant it.
Yeah.
And I have that from a man who was in the room and heard him say it.
Hmm.
So it's still secondhand to me. I wasn't there, but it's from firsthand somebody that was in that room and heard him say, "I will haunt you if you don't do this."
Wonderful, wonderful.
And a couple of years later, when they opened the Rose Garden at the induction of the ceremony and everything, uh, unscripted, total surprise to everyone. Elizabeth Taylor publicly apologized to Sybil Burton for stealing her husband 45 years before, which is it's kind of, mental when you think about it. Like, oh, it was, does anyone even remember any of this? But I guess, people did, and they made headlines all over again.
Now, I think when anyone writes a biography about someone, especially if the person is no longer with us, there's a huge responsibility to that person to do it well, to do it right. And I think maybe a bit of an extra responsibility for you in that Roddy, quite famously, I think, said that it was something that he never wanted to happen because he was scared it would just focus on the salacious nature of things. And
Yeah.
so, how have you navigated this project?
Nobody who really doesn't want someone to write about them has an archive. And like, um, if you really don't want a book about you, then maybe don't save all your stuff.
Hmm.
And So there's that. I hope that he would like the book.
Yeah.
It is really a celebration of his life and his achievements, and I couldn't possibly love him more than I do.
Hmm.
So it's it I mean, I'm not unreservedly sort of positive or a cheerleader about each and every project he ever did or
Hmm.
anything like that. I mean, I certainly look at his work with a critical eye,
Hmm.
but I think there's a real difference between people who want to write about others in order to explore them and to celebrate their achievements, and people who want to sort of dissect them and tear them apart.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, I'm I'm not a fan of that approach to sort of life. I think I'm sort of like Roddy in that way. I want to feel like wherever I've been that I'm leaving whatever it is, I'm leaving it a little bit better than I found it. Like I'm first do no harm.
Sure.
So I think he would like it. I have a very bizarre. I write about it in the introduction, and I write about it with a little bit of trepidation because it is so bizarre. But um, so I have a friend here in Portugal who is by trade. He works with yoga and tantra and all of these, sort of spiritual things.
Hmm.
But he also, so we were having dinner one night and he looked over at me and he goes, he knew I was writing about Roddy McDowall and he didn't know much about him. And he said, "Did Roddy McDowall smoke?" And I'm like, "Yeah, like a chimney. He died
Hmm.
of lung cancer. Yes, he smoked all the time." And he's like, "And did he wear scarves?" And I go, well, yeah, he famously had this collection of Hermes scarves, and why?
Hmm.
And so my friend Jose, he goes, oh, well, I think he was in my bedroom last night. And then it was like, pass the salt. It was, I was like, oh, no, no, hold on, wait. It was, what? And so, so we had a seance, and it was so not like a seance. It was like
Uh-huh.
just a conversation. But he said that apparently, because I had gotten the galleys back on the Cesar Romero book and was busy on that and had stopped working on the Roddy book, and he said that Roddy just wanted to nudge me, and that the esteemed Mr. Romero notwithstanding, this is you're on my time now, and I thought,
It sounds legit.
if he told me some other things and some other, so if I relied on any of that as actual research for the book, I think I would, lose my writer's license or
Yeah.
whatever. I do not. And I certainly do not put that out there as some kind of de facto
Hmm.
saying that, oh, of course, Roddy approves.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know if there's life after death. I'm just a writer. What do I know? But but I will confess that I found it enormously kind of, happy
Yeah.
to me that he told me that Roddy said that he chose me, that he was like, I've been waiting and I chose you. And like the thing about that I find so sweet
Hmm.
is that even if it's a load of bull and it's not real at all, it's kind of the kind of affectionate sort of shot in the arm that Roddy McDowall would give people. Like, like I chose you, like you matter, you're special. And so in that respect, it feels to me a little bit like something that is of him, even if I have no earthly idea if it was,
Yeah.
if it was true. But it certainly adds to the Hollywood circus atmosphere of his life, of my life, of all of our lives at this
Hmm.
point.
Well, I think that's a beautiful note to finish this on. Samuel, where can people get the book?
Anywhere.
Uh-huh.
Well, it's not actually out until May 26th, but you can pre-order it now anywhere where, online books are available, and it'll be in bookstores, I believe in the UK as well as the United
Hmm.
States, at the end of May.
Wonderful. Well, Samuel, you talk about leaving things a little better than you find them. And I think through my conversation with you today, that's certainly how I feel. So thank you so much. It's
Oh,
been an absolute delight to talk to you, and I can't wait to read the book. Thank you.
thank you.
We still wait, my children. But as I look at apes and humans, living in friendship, harmony, and at peace, now some 600 years after Caesar's death, at least we wait with hope for the future.